have, for example, a non-Muslim spouse. So according to the portion of wealth that you possess, you are liable to pay zakat on your portion. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين والتابعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وبعد وسلم تسليما كثيرا. My dear respected brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As Brother Ajaz said, you have to be louder than me. Let's try that again. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. MashaAllah, much better, much better. So just as disclaimer, inshallah, before we start, one of the, mashallah, things in the community is that we have a very diverse population, mashallah. We know this, right? We have different schools of thought, different madhahib, and things, and so on and so forth. When it comes to the issues of fiqh, it's very hard sometimes to discuss because you have to keep it within a time frame, and then sometimes there isn't the ability to go through all four madhahib and their rulings particularly. So what we're going to inshallah do tonight is that we're going to discuss it from the Hanafi madhab's perspective, the Hanafi school of thought. If you have a specific school that you regularly follow, which is other than the Hanafi madhab, you are most welcome inshallah to go and consult with those scholars, right? But just for the sake, for those who don't have a particular madhab that you follow, the rule in fiqh is that you follow the imam's madhab. Whoever your imam is, that is your madhab, right? That person who doesn't have a madhab, the madhab that they have to follow is whatever the imam does, inshallah. So accordingly, we will go with the Hanafi fiqh, inshallah. So let's dive right into it. Inshallah, we have an agenda tonight that we need to get through, which is basically understanding zakat, what constitutes liability and eligibility, the recipients of zakat, the different scenarios, and inshallah we'll be having Q&A as well. One of the things that I would like to request is if we take one of these mics, actually, no, the one back there. Inshallah, if we can grab one of those, this way we have a way for the questions, inshallah, to come from the audience. For the sisters who are listening in right now, inshallah, you can text 407-496-3601 with your questions, inshallah, since I cannot hear you. Once again, the number is 407-496-3601, inshallah. Fine. Okay, inshallah. Let's dive into it. What is zakat? We've all heard this before. What is zakat? So linguistically, zakat means something that provides a blessing. When a person pays zakat, then you are causing the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to come down in your wealth. This is very, very, very important. The second linguistic meaning that is associated with zakat is purification, right? Zakat here refers to purification in the sense that when you pay your zakat, the rest of your wealth is purified. Tamam? And the third definition that is provided for zakat is growth. It is an-nama wa ziyada, right? That it is growth that is provided, meaning that there is a certain intrinsic blessing that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's hadith that ma naqasa malun min sadaqah. When you give something in charity, it actually does not decrease your wealth, it actually increases your wealth. There's a blessing that is provided within that. The legal definition of it in terms of the Sharia is تمليك بعض مال جزما عينه الشارع لفقير مسلم لله تعالى. So this definition actually has different components within it. First component, it is the transferring of ownership. The transferring of ownership. This is very, very important. This is a place where a lot of people make mistakes in terms of dispensing the zakat. So it is the transferring of ownership, meaning that my wealth that I possessed, I now make someone else the owner of that wealth. Okay, that's the first part of the definition. The second part of the definition is that it is a specified portion of one's wealth. It is 2.5% of extra wealth that is beyond a person's liabilities. And I will, inshallah, go over that. And then the third portion of it is that it must be given to a deserving Muslim. The wealth of zakat is something that cannot be given to a non-Muslim. You can use the wealth of sadaqah, which is optional charity, but zakat is obligatory charity, and this is something that must only be given to a Muslim. If it is not given to a deserving Muslim, then the zakat itself is not fulfilled. You have to give your zakat once again. So deserving here refers to whom? Deserving is a person who is a poor person, right? And we will define what is poverty in the eyes of the Sharia. So it has to be someone who is deserving, someone who is a Muslim. That's another part of the definition for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? Any questions about that definition? Fine, inshallah. Let's move on. So what is the ruling? It is wajib to pay immediately as soon as it becomes due. Right? A person can't say that, you know what, I'll give it next month, or you know what, I'll wait for a specific date, or I will wait for a specific occasion. As soon as it becomes, due upon you, that is when you have to dispense it. That is when you have to give it out. Now there's two ways. There's two ways to dispense your zakat. One is that you take the actual cash that you have and you go and you hand it to a poor person, right? That is called dispensing zakat. The other definition of dispensing the zakat is what? Where you separate the amount of zakat from the rest of your wealth and you intend for this money to be zakat. That is also, that will also fulfill the requirement of wujub here. Make sense? Any questions? Okay. What is the benefit that we get? Purification from our sins and also the removal of impurities from our wealth. This is something that is the benefit. Where is zakat established in the Quran and the Sunnah? There are so many ayat from the Quran. وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ. Right? Establish the prayer and pay your zakat. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about it in multiple places in the Quran. And in this particular ayah, Allah says, وَمَا تُقَدِّمُوا لِأَنفُسِكُم مِّنْ خَيْرٍ تَجِدُوهُ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ بَصِيرٌ. It is mentioned 82 times. أَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ. Allah says that whatever you send forward for yourself, whatever you advance for yourself, meaning that when you're paying your zakat, you are now establishing a position for yourself in the paradise. So you're sending for your home and your abode in the hereafter. That's what you're doing. تَجِدُوهُ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. If you do it for the sake of Allah, you will find the reward of it with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Make sense? طيب. In the Sunnah, عن Ibn Abbas رضي الله تعالى عنهما أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بعث معاذا إلى اليمن فذكر الحديث بطوله وفيه إن الله قد افترض عليهم صدقة في أموالهم تؤخذ من أغنيائهم فترد في فقرائهم. In this lengthy hadith, the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم sent the famous companion who is known as the mufti of this ummah, Mu'adh ibn Jabal رضي الله تعالى عنه. He deputed him as his viceroy and he sent him to Yemen to teach the people the deen and the religion. And part of the guidelines that he sent him with is that instruct them that they have an obligation, that Allah has made it obligatory for them to pay zakat upon their assets, and it is to be taken from the wealthy among them and given to the poor amongst them. This is one of the most important frameworks to keep in mind, that the purpose of the zakat is not so that the Sharia can burden someone, but rather it is to take away the disparity between the rich and the poor. It is to remove that disparity between the rich and the poor. So many times we'll come across occasions where, yes, if a person kind of twists their arm or comes up with a scenario, you might get away from paying the zakat. But does the Sharia want that? No. In those scenarios where the poor benefit more, that is what the Sharia wants. Right? This is how we will be able to remove the disparity from the society, the difference between the rich and the poor, inshallah. Okay, so very, very important in zakat, we talked about this. This is the first part of the definition, which is called tamlik. Tamlik means the transference of ownership. The transference of ownership. In zakat, you must transfer the ownership to a living person. So zakat will only be considered to be paid when tamlik is found. What is the definition of tamlik? It means the transference of ownership from the zakat payer to the needy person. It has to be a person. It cannot be an institute. It cannot be, a non-person entity. This is very, very important. So the tamlik will only take place with the following conditions. Number one, the transfer must be the zakat payer or his or her agent. Right? So the permission must be there. Right? Permission must be there. You will see where this scenario actually comes into place, especially when we are the custodians of the wealth of our children. Many people make this mistake, especially the children that have become baligh now, they have become mature. You're actually not allowed to pay zakat from their wealth unless you obtain their permission. Zakat is not considered paid until you have obtained their permission. So it has to be the zakat payer or his or her agent. Number two is that the transferee, the recipient, must be a natural living person. It cannot be, as I said, a non-living entity. The person must be entitled to receive zakat and not a legal entity. It must be a poor person. Otherwise, what happens? Institutions come in, organizations come in, and then so on and so forth. They say that we're collecting zakat money. Okay, you're collecting zakat money, but now the percentage of admin cost is what? It's 40%, 50%, 60% sometimes. So is your zakat becoming ada? Is it being fulfilled? Absolutely not. There is a portion that has been set aside for those that are the collectors of zakat. This used to be, something that was allowed in the Quran, and also it took place during, the days of Islamic, Khilafah and so on and so forth. But sometimes this particular condition is abused as well. We see many, many cases of this. So what I would suggest is that if you are deputing, an agent, meaning that you're giving to an organization, make sure that they have 100% zakat policy. Easiest way, make sure that they have 100% zakat policy. The admin fees is something that can be fulfilled from somewhere else. I've worked for a relief organization, so I know. I'm telling you. So each organization should have a 100% zakat policy. Because zakat, the amount of zakat, the portion of zakat, in comparison to the other tabarru'at and donations and sadaqah and all of that, it's a very minute percentage. Why are we double dipping? Right? Let the poor benefit. Right? Let it not be that admin fees are being taken out from the zakat. Yes, in the case where there is a severe need, there is no infrastructure in place, and subhanAllah, you have to hire local people. If you cannot hire local people to deliver the zakat, then it will not be delivered. In those cases, no problem. The Sharia allows for this to happen. But we have to be very, very careful about this. Right? Any questions about this? Right. Yes.
Very safe now. How do we, stay in the US and make sure that those organizations, fulfill what we say?
This is, again, our responsibility. We are what we consume. We have to make sure. You have to find out the policies of each organization with regards to their zakat, how they distribute it, where they distribute it, how they you have to investigate. Because at the end of the day, if you end up giving it to an organization who is not fulfilling the zakat properly, your zakat is not fulfilled. So the onus is on you. The responsibility is actually on you as the consumer, that you have to make sure. And that is why sometimes, it's better that sometimes we create some local entities which we know are actually doing the work that is needed to be done. And it happens in front of our eyes, that we can actually go and fact check, that we can go and verify. Otherwise, you give it to multinational organizations, and what happens? Sometimes there's no accountability. And sometimes when the accountability even comes out, it's already, years have passed. Now what are you going to do? Backtrack and give your zakat again? The Sharia says you have to. Right? So being a responsible person in regards to this is our deen. This is a matter of the Sharia. We have to be very, very careful, inshallah. Right? Okay. The transferee, the recipient, must acquire possession and become the owner of the funds unconditionally. This is very important. Sometimes the zakat money is sent, but there's conditions that are attached to it. Is your zakat fulfilled? No. It must go unconditionally. The person must be made an owner of it. And scenario, people say that, okay, we are building wells using zakat money. The question is that, are you building a well in the middle of the village where 200 families can access it? Or are you building a well in someone's personal backyard? If you are building the well in the personal backyard and you are making this person, this poor person, the owner of that well, then your zakat is paid. But if you're building a communal well, who's the owner then? Right? It's not one person. Right? So it has to be one person who takes the ownership of the zakat funds, or something that is purchased with it and the ownership is then given. Make sense? Tayyib, inshallah. So who are the eligible recipients? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yes. Can you use the mic, please?
At times we give the zakat in the shape of clothes or shoes or something like that.
You're allowed to do that. You can do that as long as those clothes or whatever commodity you're purchasing goes to that person and they become the owner of that. So you can even use money, for example, to purchase food. And so what happens? The food basket actually goes to that person or that family and they become the owner of it. No problem. Zakat is paid. Okay? All right. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ وَالْمَسَاكِينِ وَالْعَامِلِينَ عَلَيْهَا وَالْمُؤَلَّفَةِ قُلُوبُهُمْ وَفِي الرِّقَابِ وَالْغَارِمِينَ وَفِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ فَرِيضَةً مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَاللَّهُ عَلِيمٌ حَكِيمٌ. So in this ayah, there are 8 masarif, 8 eligible recipients or categories of recipients that are mentioned. So let's start off with the first one. لِلْفُقَرَاء وَالْمَسَاكِينَ. Al-fuqara wal-masakin. Right? What is al-fuqara wal-masakin? The poor and the needy. Right? In different definitions, al-fuqara are those that have nothing, absolutely nothing. Al-masakin are those that have a little bit of wealth, but their wealth does not total the nisab. So now they are considered people who are needy. But they have maybe some basic food. They have some basic resources of life. So both categories are eligible to receive zakat. Those that have completely nothing and those have something, but it is not enough to receive or to reach the amount of nisab. Make sense? Okay. وَالْعَامِلِينَ عَلَيْهَا. This is the category that I was talking about, right? Where those that are employed to collect the zakat, the zakat collectors, they are able to receive a portion from the wealth. But again, what is the scenario? Make sure that you go out of your way to be very careful about this. Otherwise, it can be abused. It's very easy for it to be abused, right? Next one. وَالْمُؤَلَّفَةِ قُلُوبُهُمْ. Those non-Muslims or Muslims, new Muslims, whose hearts are drawn nearer to Islam by offering them gifts, by offering them money. This is something that occurred. Does anybody know when this happened in the seerah? Come on. This is a quiz question, yes. Umar radiallahu ta'ala, okay. In the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when did this happen? No, not Uhud and Badr. Hunayn. After the battle of Fath Makkah, not the battle, but when Makkah was just conquered, then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahaba, they went to combat the Banu Thaqif, right? Or the Banu Hawazin, right? At the battle of Hunayn. And this is where the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba, they were victorious. They won huge sums of, war spoils. And so what happened is that the majority of it was given to whom? The disbelieving Quraysh. And because of the Prophet ﷺ giving this much amount of wealth and displaying such generosity, majority of them accepted Islam. So, وَالْمُؤَلَّفَةِ قُلُوبُهُمْ. Make sense? So if there's someone, for example, that is very interested in Islam, but maybe they're struggling in their life, in their dunyawi life, in their worldly life. If and it's not that we're trying to, wal'iyadhu billah, bribe someone. That's not the intention. The intention is to show kindness to someone, to be there for them, to support them, to show them the akhlaq of Islam. And so, inshallah, with the intention that they will, inshallah, take their shahada. Make sense? So, وَالْمُؤَلَّفَةِ قُلُوبُهُم وَفِي الرِّقَابِ, right? To free slaves. Do we have slavery in today's times? No. So this category doesn't exist. وَالْغَارِمِينَ, those that have debts upon them, right? Those that are severely in debt, you can use the zakat money to support them to repay their debts. Okay? Now you're going to say that majority of America is in debt. Yes? You have mortgages, you have car loans, you have business loans, you have this loan, that loan. So everybody is nobody needs to pay zakat, right? Let's just finish up and go. No, there's a difference between short-term debt and there's a difference between long-term debt. Inshallah, we will go into these categories. وَالْغَارِمِينَ وَفِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. Fi sabilillah are those that are in the path of Allah, especially those mujahideen that are doing jihad in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are needy, to support them. This is another place where the zakat funds can be utilized. Okay? وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ, and a person who is traveling. A traveler, maybe this is a little bit less applicable in today's times where we have a global economy, mashallah, you have a global village. Even if people are traveling sometimes, they usually can access money wherever they are in the world. Even if, a person loses their, technology or their phones or wallets or so on and so forth. But it's possible. You're traveling somewhere completely remote, right? And suddenly you've lost all of your money that is with you. Okay? You have nothing to barter with, you have nothing to trade with, you've lost everything. There was a disaster, the plane crashed, wal-iyadhu billah, right? You're in the middle of nowhere, right? You have money at home, but you don't have access to those funds. Now the zakat money can be paid to bail this person, this traveler who's in need, out of the problem that they're in. Make sense? Fariidatan min Allah, this is an obligation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wallahu alimun hakim. Allah is the most knowledgeable and the most wise. Okay? So non-eligible, yes. Use the mic, please.
And in terms of the distributing the zakat, is the Sharia how much that goes to?
The Sharia does not specifically mention the portion, but it should be something that is commonly known. It's commonly understood that this is, for example, if an organization has employees in a certain country, what is a fair wage? Right? What is a fair wage that is employable in that sense? Then you can pay them out of that portion, inshallah. So it's not set, because if it was set, then it would create a lot of haraj and difficulty, right? So that's one of the wisdoms of the Sharia, is that this amount has not been set. Right? Okay, who are the non-eligible recipients? General welfare projects, right? You cannot use zakat money to fund general welfare projects. What money can you use? Donations, tabarru'at. You can use sadaqah money, but you cannot use zakat money. You cannot use zakat money to build hospitals. Why? Because they're not living human beings, they're entities. Even though there's benefit being provided. Yes, for example, if the hospital sets up a system where they have a contract that they will make with the patient to collect zakat on their behalf, and the person will sign off to say that this will go towards my hospital bills, no problem, la ba'sa fi. Okay? There's no problem with that. If the hospital has a system like that. Same thing with madrasas and Islamic schools and Islamic universities and so on and so forth. If the administration has a system where they are collecting zakat on behalf of poor and needy students, and then those poor and needy students actually sign a contract and a document and an understanding that you can collect zakat on my behalf, then it will be allowed. But to directly take zakat money and to fund Islamic schools and madrasas and so on and so forth, this is not allowed. Use the money of donations and sadaqah. Construction project for masajid. Yes?
Maybe rich people So they have taken a written legal document from all of them. So how
No. The document is only specifically with the poor students. It is not taken from those that can afford their fees. So it's basically figuring out how you're going to, for example, this is an institution. I need to now figure out how can I match my bills? How can I run my institution? I need to figure out where the sourcing is coming from. So I have, on the one end, I have those students that can afford the tuition. So alhamdulillah, they're paying it. And those students that cannot afford the tuition, that's the person that I'm making a contract with. Tamam? Okay. Same thing, construction projects for masajid and hospitals and so on and so forth. Okay. The descendants of Abbas radiallahu ta'ala an, Harith, Ja'far and Aqil radiallahu ta'ala anhum. Who are these people? They are the Ahlul Bayt, the family of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? The family of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, zakat money is haram upon them. This is the Prophet ﷺ declared it himself. He said, for myself and for my descendants. So you cannot use zakat money to support them, but definitely go out of your way. If you know somebody who is deserving from the Ahlul Bayt, go and support them from your normal money, from your normal donations, treat them better than you treat your own family. Imagine if you want to have proximity with Rasul ﷺ on the Day of Judgment, take care of his loved ones. Allahu Akbar. Right? A rich person cannot receive zakat. Okay, you cannot give zakat to your wife or your husband, no matter how much you love them. Zakat is not allowed. Some people actually do this. Before the zakat becomes due, they said, honey, you take my, let me give you a gift. So that reduces their requirements. Then they don't pay zakat. This is haram. This is not allowed. So you cannot give zakat to your wife or your husband, your spouse. You cannot give zakat to your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents. You cannot give zakat to your your grandson and your great-grandson. So going upwards, going downwards, and going immediately to your spouses. Can you give zakat to your brother and your sister? Yes, you can. It is actually more rewarding for you. You will get double the reward. Your brother, your sister, your aunt, your uncle, your cousin, you'll get double the reward because one is giving, money to someone who is deserving. Second thing is the reward for, maintaining the ties of kinship. Tamam? So going upwards is not allowed, going downwards is not allowed, and your spouses, you're not allowed. Beyond that, yes, it is allowed in terms of family members. Non-Muslim employees as remuneration. So you're running a business, you have non-Muslim employees, let me give my zakat to non-Muslim, to them. No. As I said, one of the requirements of zakat is you have to give it to a Muslim. You have to give it. And also, you cannot pay your employee the money that he is owed through zakat funds. You cannot do that. Right? Because zakat funds itself is something that is not something that is considered dignified. You are taking this out from your portion of wealth to purify your wealth. So imagine the person who is receiving it. And then you have a person who's actually genuinely working and they're now owed wages. Can you pay wages from zakat money? No. Pay them their wages. And then give them additional on top of that from their zakat if they need it. Make sense? طيب. Those that are incarcerated, unless they're actually eligible, they have no funds outside, they have no source of funding, so on and so forth, you cannot use zakat money for those that are incarcerated. Make sense? Because normally there's a system in the prisons, especially in the West, where they're able to work to earn some wages in the prison, or they have money outside. So the Sharia does not consider them to be those that are poor, right? Unless it is a situation where this person, this prisoner, this convict doesn't have any family outside, doesn't have any source of income, doesn't have anything, and the prison obviously, you're not going to become a rich person from it. In that case, if the person is poor, then you can pay the zakat. But you cannot blanket give it to all prisoners. Okay? All right, paying the zakat. One should not delay the paying of the zakat. Number one, in the process of paying the zakat is your intention. the intention must be made at the time of giving the zakat to a qualifying recipient or to one's agent, or at the time of separating the zakat funds from one's total assets. I talked about this already, didn't I? I said that there's two ways. One is that you go and you directly give it. Okay, now you've given it. Or you have separated the funds from the rest of your funds and you have allocated, and this is known that this is zakat funds. In both cases, inshallah, the obligation of the zakat will be fulfilled. Even if you take these funds that you have set aside and for example, you travel overseas, you have family members, so on and so forth, you go and you give them, you hand out cash, no problem. Mafi mushkila. Okay? All right, paying on behalf of spouse or children. It is permissible to discharge somebody else's zakat from one's own wealth on condition that one has approval and acknowledgement from the other party. It is not a must. Sometimes, some sisters will say that, oh, I thought my husband is supposed to pay my zakat. No, that obligation is not there. If you have your own wealth, you are eligible to pay your own zakat. The obligation is upon you to pay your own zakat. Now you may make the person maybe a nice meal, take them out and give them, and then, mashallah, they'll be, motivated to pay your zakat for you. That's a different story, right? But they are not obligated. The husbands are not obligated to pay zakat on behalf of their children, especially if those children have wealth of their own, nor on behalf of a spouse. Make sense? Yes.
Does this only apply to children and spouses, or for example, could it be zakat for ex?
So what's the reason behind paying zakat for someone else? So there is a difference, because the idea is that if you are paying zakat on behalf of a person, it means that they're already wealthy. So they should be paying zakat out of their own. If the person doesn't possess wealth, then you don't need to pay zakat. You actually give them the zakat. You see what I mean? But your spouse and your children, you are directly responsible for them. There's already a closed network that's created there. Make sense? That's the reason why. Yes, there's one more question.
Say the wife, she has her duty, etc., but she doesn't make any income.
Yes.
However, she has a joint account with her husband. Does that mean that she can use that joint account without with her husband? How does she extend the account? She has a duty to stop.
So jewelry and zakat is a very common question, obviously, right? So if you have, for example, a one-income household, and you have, for example, in this scenario, you have a joint account, right? Again, for the zakat to be paid, one has to have the permission, first and foremost. Second thing is that if, for example, the person does not have any additional income beyond the jewelry that is possessed, right? And in the case, for example, maybe she's a widower. She doesn't have a husband who can, support her or anyone else like that. Then the normal recommendation that is given by the ulama is that reduce the amount of jewelry to below the nisab. So now you won't have to pay zakat anymore. Make sense? On the other hand, if, for example, there's a joint account, then most likely there's an understanding that you can use the money without permission that is needed because there's a joint access to it, right? And in the case of paying the zakat, again, you have to take permission, right? Inshallah, this is the amount of zakat, these are our liabilities, this is what the zakat portfolio is. Each and every one will have to do their own, and then they set that aside and then they pay their zakat. Make sense? Inshallah. Okay, go ahead. This one is a popular one, mashallah. Because salam wa rahmatullah. So in that scenario, let me repeat that scenario, where a person is perhaps married to a non-Muslim woman, right? And then you have a joint account. But even in a joint account, there is at least the understanding of a 50-50 ownership, yes? So your zakat in that case would be paid from that 50% that you have. Tamam? Because that's considered to be your wealth. So if the account is a shared account where there's both sides that are coming in, it's 50-50, then the portion that is known to be yours, that is where you will pay your zakat from. Okay? Anyone else? Yes, go ahead. Alaikum salam.
So I have a question. So, and stuff you I can do it later, just in case you're a but let's say I'm a male single family, I know children, etc., and wife, and I have to do like 2.5%. Is that like out of your savings, or is that like everything you make?
So very, very good questions. Inshallah, this is coming. This is so he's asking what portion of wealth, is it from the savings, is it from something else? Inshallah, we're going to talk about this in the next slide. Right? So paying on behalf of someone, you have to have permission and you have to have acknowledgement. Right? So every time, it's not, okay, I had permission 10 years ago, so now I'm just paying 10 years. No. Acknowledgement every time that I've paid your zakat, every single year. There has to be an information that is provided. Okay, what is the conditions for paying zakat? You must be a Muslim. Does non-Muslim have to pay zakat? No, right? You have to be an adult. So children who are not baligh, even though they possess wealth, they don't have to pay zakat. So you started a college, for example, a college fund for your child who is 5 years old. There's no zakat, even though there might be 20,000, 50,000, 100,000 in that account, you don't have to pay zakat. Tamam? Because the condition is that they have to be an adult. The third qualifying factor is that they have to be sane, al-aqil. They cannot be insane, meaning that they cannot be a person who doesn't have control over their mental faculties. They have to be a person who is functioning mentally. So Sharia absolves a person who is not mentally sane. Right? Sharia absolves them. Right? Inshallah, this is their trial that they are dealing with in this life, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant them Jannah, inshallah. Sharia does not make them obligated to follow the injunctions of the Sharia. Okay, number 4 is the possessor of wealth that is equaling to nisab. Remember this word, nisab. Possessor of wealth that is equaling to nisab. Nisab is the marker for paying the zakat. And nisab is also the marker for receiving zakat. If you have less than the nisab, you are eligible to receive the zakat. If you have more than the nisab, you are liable to pay the zakat. Make sense? And the nisab, the person who possesses the nisab, 1 lunar year has to pass, not 365 days. 1 lunar year has to pass. And then 2.5% becomes due upon the savings. So, for example, someone became the possessor of nisab on the 1st of Ramadan. 1 lunar year must pass. They must have at least the amount of nisab. And then the next year, the following year, the 1st of Ramadan, now their zakat will become due. Okay? All right. So another thing in between is that fluctuations that happen in between are not counted. So somebody, say for example, the nisab is, say, $1,000. I'm just putting it out there, right, as an example. So I came into possession of $1,000. I am now considered to be a wealthy person in the eyes of the Sharia. After that, what happened is that during the year, something happened, I received $50,000. So now what I have in the bank? 51,000. But guess what? Before my zakat date became due, I spent the entire 50,000. Do I have to pay zakat on the 50,000? No. Sharia makes it very easy. Sharia says that you only have to take into consideration 2 dates. The date that you became the possessor of the nisab and the date that your zakat is due. The date that your zakat is due, that is the day that you will open up your portfolio. What is my wealth? Right? Total, put all of your assets into that portfolio. Then from there, you will take out your liabilities. And we'll talk all about this in more detail in the following slides. And then once you've taken out your liabilities, whatever is remainder, that is when you pay 2.5% from that amount. Make sense? Tamam. Okay. What is the nisab? If you have gold, it is 87.48 grams or its equivalent in cash. Now, why did we not put the amount? Because gold and silver prices change every day, correct? So you can go on gold.com or whatever it is, and you can find out the daily rate of the gold itself. There is also a few websites that actually have their algorithms tied to the gold markets, and they will tell you what the minimum nisab is. They will tell you what the minimum nisab is. Masjidds.org. Masjid, MASJIDDS.org. This masjid, mashallah, has their algorithm tied to the gold market. So it already has, mashallah, the nisab amount. So you can go any day, click on the website, and you will see that this is the exact amount. If I have this much, now I'm known as the possessor of nisab. Tamam? So for gold, it is 87.48 grams. If you have gold jewelry, especially for the sisters, right? You have gold jewelry, it is more than 87.48 grams. Now you have to pay zakat on it. Okay? Silver, right? Silver, 612.36 grams. Now, here is another thing. That if you possess only gold, you have only gold, then you pay the nisab of gold. You pay it according to the nisab of gold, right? But if you have silver, you have gold, you have mixed assets, you have some liquid cash, you have some assets, and what do? You pay zakat according to the silver nisab. Silver is cheaper than gold, yes? Why do we say silver nisab? Because in this case, the poor people will benefit more. If everyone gave according to the gold standard, would more people pay zakat or less people would pay zakat? Less people, right? So in order to, encourage people to pay their zakat, that is why the threshold, the ulama say that the threshold will be set to the lower one, so that the poor people can benefit, inshallah. Tamam? Okay. So how do you calculate your zakat? The day that you own the nisab amount, after deducting liabilities, write down this Islamic date, not the Western date, not the Gregorian date, the Islamic date. So if it is, for example, 25th of Rajab, or for example, the 15th of Sha'ban, right? Today, what is it? What is the date, Islamic date today? 16th of Sha'ban. The 16th of Sha'ban has already started, right? So for example, you became the possessor of nisab, 16th of, you put in your diary, you put in your calendar, your notes, whatever it is, whatever you utilize. And now, one lunar year has to pass upon this. And again, what did I say? It makes no difference whether the wealth increases or decreases during the course of the year. The only two dates that you consider are the day that you became the possessor of nisab, and then the date that zakat is due. One lunar year has passed and now zakat is due. Then, as I mentioned, you bring out your entire portfolio, separate your liabilities. From there, whatever is remainder, that is called savings. From there, you will pay 2.5%. Please use the mic. Sisters, I'm so sorry. I'm using my phone to live stream. If there's any questions, is there any other number that they can text? Okay, please. Inshallah. Alaikum salam.
Are we going to define what the term liability is?
Yes. Yeah, liability. Okay, so this process, go ahead. You can pass the mic, please.
So on the value of the gold, like when jewelry, that's
Yeah.
carat, 18 carats. So how do you,
So if you take it to any jewelry shop, they will weigh it for you and tell you how many grams it is. Very easy. Or you can get something called a gram scale. You can purchase it on Amazon or whatever, and it will tell you how much. But the tricky part is where the jewelry is mixed. So you have the weight of the stones, and then you have the weight of the gold that's separate. And then, so then you have to basically go to an expert jeweler who will tell you that the value or the grammage of the gold is this much, and the rest of the weight is coming from the stones, and so on and so forth. You only pay on the gold and the silver part. You don't pay on. So there's no gold, there's no zakat on diamonds. There's no on precious stones. There's no zakat. Only gold and silver. Only gold and silver. Tamam? Okay, this last one, the process will continue until scenario 1 happens. That somehow you lose all of your money and the wealth that you have equals to less than the nisab. Less than the nisab. Or, for example, a person unfortunately experiences a tragedy where all of their wealth is gone. The house burns down or something like this. So they're completely homeless. In this case, now they're considered to be eligible to receive zakat and no longer liable to pay the zakat. Make sense? Okay. All right. What are zakatable assets? This is the question, right? Only gold and silver. From precious jewelry, only gold and silver. No platinum, no diamonds, no topaz, nothing. No precious stones, nothing. Yes. Mike, please. Mike. No. You cannot do qiyas here. This is specific in the Sharia. When it comes to zakat, you cannot do qiyas. This is الذهب والفضة فقط. Yeah. But you know where the equivalency comes out? الذهب والفضة or the cash equivalent. So that's where it comes out. Otherwise, for example, if a person doesn't own any gold or silver, then they can say that I don't have to pay zakat. No, the cash equivalent, if you have that, say for example, you have it in crypto, or you have it in stocks, or you have it in other assets, you have to pay zakat because that's a tangible asset that has value. Tamam? No, if the diamond is a tangible asset, for example, it's a diamond ring, or a person has diamonds, right? If a person has a diamond business, and that is what they deal in, for example, then it is assessed according to a different standard. Now it is considered that you have a business, and the ruling for business is 2. Finished goods are going to be valued at retail price, and non-finished goods, meaning raw materials, are going to be valued at the wholesale price. So you have to take that into your portfolio, take that into account, and then you have to dispense your zakat. Yes? I'm gonna get to stocks. I'm gonna get to stocks. Okay, so just this last. So this answers the question that he asked, that what if a person doesn't have gold and silver, they have some other. So cash, right, makes up for the rest of the things. Make sense? Okay, now business stocks. Go ahead, Bismillah. What's your question?
So for instance, when you calculate your bills, everything, so you should call the money. So you already have the exact amount you pay for zakat. And you pay for all your bills. And you want to stop. So all of a sudden you want to know how it goes out. So what do you do?
So business stock, the way that it is taken, right, is that business stocks is actually what I talked about, that when a person has, a business and then they have inventory, for example, right? Inventory, you have to pay zakat on your inventory. You have to pay zakat on your non-finished goods, your raw materials. So on the day that zakat is due, you have to calculate all of that. Now, when it comes to the other regular type of stock, investment stocks, right? Investment stocks are such that there's a little bit of detail to them. First and foremost, the investment should be in something that is halal, that is Sharia compliant, which means that the majority of the business must be halal, right? And that also applies to 401ks. 401ks are optional savings accounts, retirement accounts, they're optional. So if your 401k is investing into a stock that is not halal, you are responsible to share your concern. Right? This is my money. So they usually have a shareholder meeting every single year. You are supposed to voice your concerns at that time, whether in written form or verbally. Second thing is that when it comes to, these stocks, they have value. The way that you take out their value is, for example, you have to look at what the share price is for that particular day. So if, for example, Ramadan 1st, my zakat is due, what are my stocks worth? Tamam? So I take the value of that, the cash value of that, and I include it into my zakat portfolio, and then I dispense my zakat from there. Agricultural produce. Agricultural produce is something that also, counts as wealth, and you have to take out the value of that, and then you have to include that into your zakat. Make sense? If a person is a farmer, the amount of the worth of the animals, for example, or for example, if you have crops, then what are the yield of those crops? What is the expected yield? What is, So all of that has to be. Again, if they are non-finished, if they're still in the field, what is their worth? If you sell them at a wholesale price. If you have, for example, something that's already pre-packaged, it's already going, then it's going to go for retail price, right? So all of these things are taken into account. Animals and livestock, same thing over here, right? Non-zakatable items, jewelry besides gold and silver. Jewelry besides gold and silver, any cars that you have, any vehicles that you have, any cars that you have, any vehicles that you have, they're not zakat eligible, right? Many people, subhanAllah, ask this question and they're like so worried, how much zakat do I pay for my car? I'm like, mashallah, enjoy your car. Allah gave you a concession. So whether it's one car, two cars, three cars, it doesn't matter. It's zakat, there's no, as long as you are using it for your personal use, there's no zakat upon them. If you have bought a vehicle in order to lease it out, or for example, to do ride sharing, right? Then what happens is that the zakat is paid on the money that is earned, not the value of the vehicle. Tamam? Okay, same thing if you have a shop, right? You don't own the shop, you're paying rent on it, then the zakat is only on the inventory. It's not on the shop itself. Tamam? Same thing, if you have a property that you have purchased to rent out, is zakat on the value of the property or is it on the rent? It's on the rent. It's not on the value of the property. Okay? Mike, please. I apologize. I know we're going to try to move as soon as possible, inshallah. That's coming. That's coming. So that's when we get into debts, debt receivables, and so on and so forth. I'll answer that question over there, inshallah. Okay, so properties, same thing. I just mentioned it, right? If it's a rental property, then you only pay on the rent. If you have extra property, you have a vacation home, you have properties overseas, but there's no intention to resell it, there's no zakat upon these properties. Tamam? Okay? Any assets in that regard, right, which are, for example, your household items, your coffee mugs, your spoons and forks and knives and clothing, no zakat. That does not go into your zakat portfolio. Right? Okay, bismillah. Gold and silver for personal use, this is zakatable. Many people ask this question, but I'm using it on a daily basis. My gold jewelry or my silver jewelry. Women ask this question. Yes, it is zakatable. If it is more than the amount of nisab that is mentioned, 87.48 grams or 613 the amount that's mentioned for the silver, if it is more than the nisab, then it will constitute the paying of zakat. White gold, or for example platinum or whatever the case is, the zakat is paid on the gold content. As I mentioned, that if you have mixed jewelry, you will separate out the other things and you will only pay zakat on the portion of the gold or the portion of silver. Cash in hand, banks, coins, notes, whatever it is, right? Crypto. all of these things are subjected to zakat. They are to be included in your zakat portfolio. Zakat is due upon them. Gold plated, is that real gold? No, so it's not zakatable. It's fake jewelry. Okay, so commodities, zakat and business inventory, I've already talked about this already. Does anybody have any questions about this? Zakat is compulsory on one's business stock. It will be calculated according to the retail price of the goods. Zakat is not compulsory on the real estate. I told you, right? It will, on the real estate purchased with the intention of the lease. So it's not the value of the property, but it's on the rental income. Okay? One will add the value of the gold, silver, cash, and total value of goods and give 2.5% in zakat. That's the answer to your question. Per year. Per year. You can't say that I've given zakat and khalas, that's it for life. No, that's not how it applies. Yes. No. So nisab is just a marker on whether you have to pay zakat or not. So your entire portfolio is then considered. So the amount of nisab and above, whatever is above that. Okay? Business. So you have partnerships. Right? Every person is liable to pay their own zakat according to percentage. This answers a question where you have, for example, a non-Muslim spouse. So according to the portion of wealth that you possess, you are liable to pay zakat on your portion. If you have a partnership of 50-50 or 60-40 or 70-30 or 20-80, whatever it is, whatever percentage you have to pay zakat from your own percentage. How do you evaluate business goods? As I said, finished products are retail price, non-finished products at wholesale price. That's how you evaluate. Okay, so what are some common transactions? Ijara and diminishing musharaka schemes. These are not considered as debt, therefore no future payments at all can be deducted from zakatable assets. So what is ijara? Ijara is, for example, a lease, right? So a person owned, for example, a person doesn't own, but they are borrowing, they're leasing a vehicle, for example, for transportation. That's one example, right? Now, because they have, it could be like, okay, maybe there's a debt upon them or something like that, or maybe they have to make payments, right? Because if you're leasing something, you have to make lease payments, right? You cannot say that, okay, I have lease payments to make, so I'm going to consider this into my zakat portfolio. No. Because this is something that you don't possess right now. Okay? Same thing with musharaka schemes. Musharaka is where you enter into a partnership. Say, for example, you have Islamic finance. You purchased a home through Islamic finance. The Islamic bank owns 90% of the asset. You own 10%. And every month you're making payments to buy out some ownership, right? In this case, can you say that, because I have liabilities in this, can I, deduct from it? There's only a certain amount that is allowed. Beyond that, you can't say that, I cannot pay zakat, because this is something that is not due right away, okay? All right, deposits. Any money that is deposited for safekeeping or given to another party for guardianship is zakatable because it still belongs to you. That money still belongs to you even though someone is watching it, somebody is guarding it. Down payments. If you pay down payment, a purchaser is not the owner of the funds forwarded in a down payment. The down payments are not subjected to zakat because you've already given that portion with the idea that you're going to pay the full price after the product is delivered to you. Tamam? So down payments are not subjected to because it's no longer your wealth. Unless there's a clause where, okay, I'm going to get my down payment back. When you get your down payment back, then it goes back into your portfolio. But when you don't have it, then you don't have it. Okay, insurance premiums. Zakat is not payable on insurance premiums. Okay? Benefits. Zakat is payable on the beneficiaries of working tax credit, child benefits. All of it translates into what? Into cash. So if you have that amount, right, if you're getting this governmental benefit and so on and so forth, social security, all of it translates to cash for you. So then that becomes something that is zakat eligible. Make sense? Okay. Go for it.
Because you can control it. You start
Once you have received it, it's in your tamlik, it's in your ownership, now it's subjected to zakat. Before that, it's not. You cannot pre-calculate it. Yeah. Yes. Same question? MashaAllah. No, absolutely. Okay, now debt receivables. You have debts that you loan money to someone, right? And you're supposed to receive that debt back. Tamam? So there are two types of debt receivables. One is a strong debt. A strong debt is those debts that are given, for example, as a forwarding loan or an outstanding invoices, which means that the likelihood of receiving that money is very strong. Right? You have an unpaid invoice, most likely they're going to pay that invoice. Or you borrowed money to a person who is very trustworthy, who is very upright, you know that this person will pay you back. So this is called a strong debt. So in this case, the creditor must pay the zakat on the amount he has lent. I lent someone $10,000, but I know it's a strong debt. I have to include that 10,000 into my zakat portfolio. Okay? It is best to add strong debt receivables to one's total asset and discharge zakat yearly. Okay? But in the case, for example, where it's a weak debt, where the receivables that you are supposed to receive, you don't know if you're going to receive them. One typical classical example of this is what? Right? At the time of marriage, the person promises $50,000 of mahr. But subhanAllah, right? The person passes away and that mahr has not been paid to the wife. Right? So she's not going to be eligible to pay zakat on the 50,000 because she hasn't received it. The bichara husband has not paid her. That's a debt, by the way. This is a cancer in society. That people set high mahars and they don't pay their mahr. This is actually a debt. If the wife does not forgive the husband on the day of Yawm al-Qiyamah, this person will have to pay. It's that serious. It's that serious. So we should set the mahr lower to something that we can expect to pay, inshallah, and get rid of it, pay it as soon as possible. You never know when you are going to survive, right? So an example of weak debt is what? Employees' unpaid wages, unpaid rental for landlord. You don't know if you're going to receive it or not, right? Especially sometimes you have very troubling tenants, so on and so forth. Outstanding mahr, we just talked about it. Outstanding bequest payment. Someone promised to pay something, like a pledge, right? But that pledge is not coming through, right? So for example, a person, before they passed away, they pledged $10,000 to the masjid. Or for example, a person received a promise that I'm going to pay you this much, right? But it's just a pledge. There's nothing obligating that person, from a dunyawi or ukhrawi perspective to pay that. So in these cases, what will happen? Zakat will not be compulsory on weak debt receivable until and unless one receives it. Debts are deductible from your zakatable total if they are to be repaid in full within the next 12 months. Everybody understand this? If they are due within the next 12 months, whether it's a personal loan, it's a credit card loan, whatever it is, right? Then you can deduct it from your portfolio. Debts which do not have to be paid in the next 12 months are not deductible. Otherwise, nobody in America will pay zakat, right? If the debts are payable by installments, then 12 months debt is deductible. Deductible liabilities. Outstanding, not future. Something that's already, that you're owed, something that's outstanding. Not future basic living expenses which have not been paid for yet. So next month's utility bill, you can include that. Next month's car payment, you can include that. Okay? So there's a difference between money that you owe and payments that you have to make. So we're talking about payments over here because in the last slide we talked about debts. Okay? There's a distinction there. Goods purchased on credit. You have received the goods, but you have not yet paid for them. and fully intend to pay the debt, right? So this is something that you can deduct from your zakat portfolio because you owe this money. You're going to have to pay it. Outstanding salaries and payable service fees. I think this is the last few slides. Inshallah, we'll be done after this. Outstanding salaries and payable service fees. You can deduct these as your liability. You can take it out of your zakat portfolio. Unpaid dowry to one's wife. Inshallah, maybe listening to a khutbah or someone speaking to someone, a person became motivated. I need to pay my wife. So inshallah, in this year, I'm going to make that 50,000. I'm going to pay my wife. Inshallah, no problem. If you have that firm intention, take it out of your zakat. No problem. All right, personal loans, that which need to be paid within a year. Okay, you can take it, remove it from your zakat portfolio. Commercial loans, the entire loan cannot be deducted against assets, only 1 year's payments. So if you have a commercial loan, only 1 year's payments, because it's a long-term debt. Okay? Zakat on shares, purchase to resell, the entire holding is subjected to zakat plus any dividends received. This is where I was coming to the details on the market shares, right? So if you purchased it to resell, so for example, you're a day trader, tamam, right? Then the entire holding is subjected to zakat plus any dividends that you make. If you've purchased it to hold, for example, you purchase blue chip stocks, Apple, Google, Tesla, whatever it is, right? You want to hold on to it, and the purpose of it is to generate dividends from it. So the zakat will be levied on the dividends and the percentage of zakatable assets of the business. This is where it gets a little bit complicated. Where will you find this information? You find it in the annual report that's provided. Okay? So, for example, you have your shares. If you have purchased shares in a company, they have to give you an annual expense report, right? It's called a profit and loss sheet, right? That's where you find out. This is where the zakatable assets of the business, that percentage is also subjected to zakat. Okay, business assets, I already talked about this. Fixed assets, right? Like for example, machinery, buildings, furniture, all of this is not zakatable. There's no zakat on them. Current assets, cash, stock and trade receivables, these are zakatable. One will pay zakat on the percentage of current assets in ratio to his share value. So if you have shared assets, you will pay according to your ratio and your share. For example, Zaid purchased $1,000 worth of shares in company XYZ. 40% of the company's assets cover machinery, furniture, cars for use. 60% of the company's assets are in the form of stock in trade, cash, receivables, gold, etc. Zakat will be due on the 60%. Zakat will be due on 60% of the $1,000, which is $600. Then 2.5% of $600 will be zakatable in addition to any dividends received. Make sense? Okay, the way to ascertain the proportion of zakatable assets from non-zakatable assets of a company is to review the balance sheet and the profit and loss. I've talked about this. There's multiple zakat calculators out there. Here's one, masjidds.org/zakat/zakat calculator. This is also the website that will have the nisab amount, right? Because it's tied to the gold prices. Here's also a sheet that we have that covers what we have talked about in this talk. And there's another sheet that we have which you can actually download, and it makes it easier for you to tally up your entire portfolio. So the top section, right, it includes all of your portfolio. The middle section, you're going to take out your liabilities, and then the last section is what you owe in zakat. Okay? Inshallah. Tamam. We're done. You want to go back? Okay. All right. Any questions?
This is say that you should be asked them.
You should find a way to inquire. You should find a way to inquire through someone else maybe, whether they're zakat eligible or not. The other thing that I forgot to mention, that when you're paying zakat to a needy person, you don't have to tell them it's zakat money. You can say that this is a gift for you, this is hadiyah. You can even say, you can use the word hadiyah, and it's not a problem. As long as you have the intention that this is zakat money, you have to take, the Sharia takes into consideration the people, the sentiments of the people. So if you tell some people that I'm giving you zakat, they'll feel very bad. So you don't have to tell the person that this is zakat money. Okay?
So much of now that I'm in a position of mom and understand, and me myself having been on the board, I can tell you I'm coming a lot of organizations becoming good Scott eligible. I think it's speaking to the community that because I'm not going to myself kind of it's Scott eligible. Well, since you mentioned myself as the first time I worked with someone, I just say that she can convey to the board that these issues help the organization, not just say that, that it's eligible for God, that they say that the actual costs are whatever you guys do.
That's the responsibility of the administration. That's the responsibility. When we take up that responsibility that we're going to represent someone else or represents the needs of someone else, it is then the responsibility of any administration or anyone in administration or anyone in power or anyone in control that they have to do their due diligence. They have to do their due diligence. Right?
There are a lot of nationally recognized already Islamic organizations, right? They say that they collect money and give it to different places.
I would be very, unfortunately, I know too much. Having worked in the non-profit sector, I know way too much. Many times even established organizations, unless you have personally reviewed their zakat policy, which they should be updating every single year, just so that the community is satisfied with what they're doing. They should present their facts, they should present their P&L, they should provide their expense reports, and then you should be able to see it, right? If you've done the research yourself, alhamdulillah, mashallah, you feel confident, go for it. Again, it's your responsibility. It's your zakat. It doesn't get paid. No, Allah is not going to question me on the Day of Judgment, or Allah is not going to question the administration. Right? You are responsible. So that's where it is, inshallah. Can I, and then I'll come.
Certain things, for instance, when you do a calculation and some of the money, and I just say, okay, I just use that and secondly, someone
Could you repeat that question first?
like maybe someone will get
Okay.
maybe for instance, God, so for instance, maybe they look like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and when it's time for Zakat will pay, and I just like maybe they was going to make it stop.
Yeah. If you forgive it altogether, then there's no zakat on it. If you forgive it altogether. Yes, Brother Ali.
For the zakat, prioritizing spending the zakat, isn't it better for the person to spend it on days of actual need? For example, say, a country, that or some people, isn't it better for me to spend it there than spend it in a place where,
So, living in the West, through my years of experience, I'll tell you that many times we underestimate the amount of need that is within our local communities. We very severely underestimate. There are many, many people who are homeless, many people who are struggling severely, many people who are in a lot of debt, right? So to provide that framework for our local community first, that is the first priority, inshallah. Not to say that you cannot send to Gaza and you should not send to Yemen and you should not send to, of course you should. But again, it becomes an issue of trust, it becomes an issue of reliable sources, and so on and so forth. What I would even suggest is that if you have reliable sources overseas, say for example you have relatives, for sure inshallah they'll fulfill it. A portion for the local community, and then keep also a portion that you're going to send overseas. Keep a portion that you're going to give to your relatives. So that inshallah the maximum benefit is spread out. That's what happens.
that gold or silver has two prices. One is purchasing and the one is selling. So which price will be used?
The price will be, so the question is that when it comes to jewelry or purchasing of gold and silver, there's a purchase price and there's the market value. So it's according to the market value. Yeah. So you could have purchased, for example, gold jewelry for $2,000 20 years ago. But the Sharia looks at what the value is currently.
No, what he's saying, Robert. So
At the
suppose
same time, today there are two prices. Number one is the price on which I purchase from a merchant
Yes.
or from a goldsmith. And on the same day, he take it back or
Selling price, yeah.
sell it,
So it'll be according to the selling price.
sell it.
Yeah, selling price. Because, again, if you were to translate that gold and silver into tangible, like liquid wealth, how much could you sell it for? So then how much is this asset worth?
My second question is, for example, I have 4 or 5 types of assets: gold, silver, dollars, and property or something like that. Then how will I translate it into one entity, or how will I calculate?
So again, what you will do is that you'll put all of your assets down on one page. There's Zakat calculators that allow you to put all of your assets in, and then basically what they do is that they take the value from each one and they total everything up. Then from there you remove your liabilities, and whatever's remainder, that's your zakat amount. You pay 2.5% from there. Okay? Inshallah. Any other questions? Yes.
Do you have any
Do I have any reliable sources? I personally, wallahi, this is not an endorsement of any organization or the other. I say that, mashallah, if you have something that you can, again, verify with your own eyes, please do so. These are the organizations to support, especially if they have 100% zakat policy and that's verifiable. Many times organizations, even for the purposes of marketing, they'll put 100% zakat policy, but it actually isn't. Unfortunately, it's fraud, right? There is an organization in California called almisbah.org. Mashallah, it's actually run by one of my colleagues. And mashallah, they run a huge operation supporting the local refugee community. Mashallah, it's like food banks, diaper banks. You know, they have huge weekly distributions of groceries and others. Fresh foods, perishable items, non-perishable items. They run also like youth centers. They have like a lot of programs and so on and so forth. And they, I know for sure, mashallah, have 100% zakat policy. It's called almisbah.org. I would inshallah support them. I do support them through my own zakat and my own, inshallah. Tamam? Yes.
International distribution or only?
They're national. They're based in California. Yeah. Inshallah. Donation match. So donation matching doesn't have to do with zakat. Like no, so the way that your zakat is dispensed is basically what you possess. Right? Donation matching in that case, if you're paying your zakat to an organization and they have a donation match, that's extra wealth for the poor. But that donation match has nothing to do with your zakat. Your zakat is what you own, what you possess. Okay? Inshallah. Wallahu a'lam. You have to compute everything. You can always give more. You can always give more. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. You can prepay your zakat for 10 years. Estimate that, okay, I have this particular salary job which pays me a certain amount, and this is what I'm expecting to make for the next 10 years, and I want to prepay my zakat. You can do that. You can pay more, but you cannot pay less.
Paying all through the year is allowed, right?
Yes, as long as it's separated. Remember, you make your intention, you separate it. These are zakat funds. You can give half here, quarter there, throughout the year. Inshallah, no problem. Mafi mushkila.
So, like stock market is so fluctuating, we also say, right? Suppose I have a stock that has value of $1,000 at almost beginning of the year, right? And then next year, it's suddenly fluctuated to like 10,000, right? And then maybe next year it goes up and down.
Yeah.
So, is it on 10,000 or 1,000?
No, so as I said, during the year, if any fluctuations happen, you don't count
No,
that.
but what I'm saying, fluctuation just happen to be on that day of.
If it happens on that day, that's your
That's
Christmas.
what I'm saying. Yeah. That will be the one, right?
Yeah. For example, if a person received, say for example, there's 2 days left until the zakat is due, and then someone received inheritance in the form of $100,000, you have to pay zakat on it, right?
Another thing is the 401k. So the 401k.
Did I not mention? Oh, subhanallah, yes. Please, go ahead. Yeah.
401k, so it is like, I mean, it's not under your control, but you can actually withdraw it, you cannot, right? You
Yes,
know that.
penalty and
Lot of
taxes.
things, right? So how that one is calculated?
So 401k zakat is paid in 2 ways. Either, number one, you calculate every single year and you pay the amount that you have in your 401k. You include that into your zakat liability and you pay zakat. That's actually easier to do. Or what you can do is that you can keep track every single year, right? 2024, I had this much in my 401k, right? This much zakat was due, this much, right? 2025, 2026, and then 59.5, that's when we are eligible to receive our 401k, right? So then you pull out all of your records and you pay the zakat of all of these previous years one time. Okay? That's so 2 ways to pay it.
But if you do every year, then you pay on the full amount, or you deduct the penalty amount and all this.
So this is one place that I have heard some scholars say that you can deduct the penalties and you can deduct the taxes that are due. I've heard some scholars say this, and some fatwa that I have come across is that no, because it's more benefit to the poor, include the total amount. Unless you actually end up taking it out, and then you had to pay the penalties and you had to pay the taxes. In that case, deduct the penalties and deduct the taxes.
Most of the cases, that's what happens. Like because after working so many years, the 401k is like almost $1 million.
Right.
But, you cannot pay that zakat amount unless you calculate that. That's what I'm saying.
So again, like,
the right,
yeah.
right ruling. It's not that okay.
Yeah.
Like you
Whatever
say,
you-
pay more, but
yeah.
what is the right ruling? That's the ruling. You pay more, but
Yeah.
that's the ruling that you pay this much of your 401k.
Yeah.
Because that
So
is-
as I said, there's differences in the opinions of the. Maulana, do you have any fatwa that? Yeah, this particular issue is a little bit complicated. Some muftis say that you can deduct the penalty and the taxes, and then the remainder amount will be subjected to zakat. But some muftis say that because it's a metaphorical penalty and metaphorical taxes because you haven't taken it out. So the totality of that wealth, because you haven't taken it out, belongs to you. Which means that if you wait 59.5 years, you're going to actually have access to all of that wealth. So it's more benefit to the poor. Okay? Inshallah. Yes. Can you use the mic, please? No problem. Alaikum salam. Yes. Yeah, so you can either keep that calculation and then pay one time at the end for all of the 30 years, for example, or you can dispense it every single year.
Second question is, for example, I gave some money, and then it wasn't included in the
It turned into a bad debt.
Just practically, he's acknowledging
Yeah.
that it's going to be like in 2 years.
Yeah.
and the money going to once.
So in that case, you will only pay zakat once you receive that money, because it turned into a weak debt. Once you receive it, then that's when you pay for it. And you don't have to pay for the 3-year cycle. You don't have to pay for it. Right? Or on the other case, like for example, you decided to forgive the person, then khalas, you forgave them, it's no longer your wealth, so you don't have to pay zakat on it. Sure.
So if I have money somewhere else and I have to pay this account, can I either whatever loan I have on that person and say, I have $2,000, give me this account, and then let that person take $2,000.
No.
I can take that $2,000 from
No. You can't. Because that opens up a whole can of worms, right? You cannot pay wages with your zakat. Same thing, you cannot. You can pay your zakat to them, and if now once they possess the money, they can turn around and use that money to pay you, but you cannot demand it. Remember that the zakat has to be paid without any conditions. You cannot stipulate conditions that I'm going to remove 2,000 from here. The rest I'm giving you. The other thing that I also forgot to mention in this slides was that it is not recommended to give so much of zakat to one person that they become the possessor of nisab. It's not recommended. You can, it's allowed, it's permissible, but it's not recommended. It's better to spread it out so that maximum people benefit, inshallah. Someone had a question?
If you are
try your best to figure out the date. My suggestion, like for example, if you have a bank account or something, try to backtrack your statements or something. Try to make an effort as much as possible. And then even then, if you're not able to find out the date of your nisab, then inshallah, then do it on the day of, right? Like for example, tonight, right? So it'll be the 16th of 16th of Sha'ban, 1446. This is when I am now the possessor of nisab. So I'll pencil this date in, and then next year, inshallah, 16th of Sha'ban, that is when my zakat will become due. Right? No, there's no time limit. As long as it's separated, right, then, inshallah. But the encouragement is there that if you have it, distribute it as soon as possible so that the poor people benefit. Because if that wealth remains with you and you pass away, that wealth is actually amana. It belongs to the poor. So the situation becomes a little bit complicated then. So the idea is that we don't have the guarantee of life, so we should pay the zakat as soon as possible, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of you for sitting here. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the guidance to dispense our zakat in the correct way. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to benefit the poor and continue to become assets of benefit for the people, the community, the ummah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ameen ya rabbal alameen. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين من كل ذنب فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. جزاكم الله خيرا.